All righty, Fountain of Youth. Yeah. How you feeling this morning? How's your, that's the answer. Young. Who said young? That's right. Go on, Sanford. That's right. Feeling young. That's what I'm talking about. Well, you can obviously tell I'm feeling 6. Thank you. Or actually, well, that's weird. So, but right now I'm actually 14. And then next week I'll be 6. I'm regressing. Yeah. Yeah, we all have Benjamin Button's disease, don't we? But you know, that's interesting, Benjamin Button's, because that's like the whole Fountain of Youth thing. We've been, you know, we run around with this idea about our age, and I hear folks talk about, well, I'm cashing in on Social Security. I got my money and it's coming in and I'm gonna get more out of it than I paid into it. That won't happen for many of us, but for some of you who are already collecting, that might be your story. Or maybe that the insurance is losing money on me, you know, because I'm going to make it pay off. And I know that sometimes people say, like, you know, I outlived my father, I outlived my grandfather, you know, he only lived to be 59, he only lived to be 75, and I'm going to live to be... I actually think I'm like about halfway there. I'm going for 125, with good health. You know, with good health. And to amplify that, I've been reading some Mary Baker Eddy, because she was absolute about that stuff. You know, in the Christian Science, that was pretty intense how she did it. In fact, I'm going to talk a little bit about her later on. But this whole idea about life being some kind of contest, you know, contest against where we win against others. I lived longer than they lived, or I cheated death, you know, and that we repeat the victory of cheating death every year on the anniversary of our birthday. We get a repeat each year, that we continue to outlive the actuarial tables, you know. But this idea about living a long time, and also this story about having immortality or the fountain of youth, it's a long and old story. We know about Ponce de Leon, right, and him trying to find the lost island of Bimini? Yeah, that's the one, Bimini. Right. Like so many explorers, he discovered Florida. He got lost and discovered a place where people were already living. But that's the other story. That's another story for another day. But it goes even further back than that. I love the story. I was reading Joseph Campbell, Hero with 1,000 Faces. My God, Joseph Campbell is so smart. After like an hour of reading him, my brain had turned to mush. I had to put it down. It was just so incredibly and wonderful. And it's a great book. And in this book, where he talks about myth and parables and all these wonderful stories, he tells the story of Gilgamesh. You familiar with the story of Gilgamesh? He was one of the earlier, he's pre-Mesopotamian, pre-Christian, and he was in the Mesopotamian lands. And this story, apparently, you know, all cultures, if you look at their myths, you'll find a flood story in just about all the different cultures. And in the Mesopotamian culture, there is a flood story, and this flood god, there was a guy who drained the earth of the flood, and in that draining of the earth, he went and lived at the bottom of a bottomless sea. Now that's a crazy thing right there. How does a bottomless sea have a bottom? But anyway, that's how myths work, you know? And so here's this hero living down at the bottom of the bottomless sea, and down there with him is this plant of immortality. And this plant of immortality is covered with thorns, and the only way you can get the immortal life is to pluck the flower from the thorns, but on the way to plucking the flower, your hands are gonna get all beat up because it's like thorny, right? And so that's supposed to keep it safe. It's at the bottom of a bottomless sea, and it's covered in thorns. And here comes along Gilgamesh, and he says, hey, I know, I'm gonna go get this plant. So he travels to the sea, he founds this ferryman, the only ferryman crazy enough to take him out to where this place is where you're supposed to dive to reach the bottom. And the ferryman says, okay, here's the spot. So Gilgamesh, how he does this, it's a myth, right? He goes, hold his breath, and dives and gets to the bottom of the bottomless sea. And once he's down there, he tears up his hands and he gets the flower and he brings it back to the surface. So now he's got immortality in his hands, but he's tired. So he lays down for a nap, and the plant falls out of his hand, and a snake comes along and eats it. And that's why snakes shed their skin, so they can have fresh renewal, and they get their immortality, and we didn't. That's how the Mesopotamians tell the story. Then it goes even further back than that. Like 15 centuries earlier in China, this guy named, hold on, I'll get it right because I don't want to do it backwards. I always want to say Kung Ho. It's Ko Hung. So this Chinese philosopher, Ko Hung, he decides he's going to make an immortality pill. He's like an early pharmaceutical guy. He would be great in Canada. He could sell stuff to us for cheap. Anyway, he goes and he's trying to make this pill. And he works forever to make this pill. And he comes up with this recipe for how you make the pill. And you have to dry it out in the sun. And then the sun crystallizes it. And you break that into these little bitty pills the size of a seed. And then you take 10 pills a day for like 30 days. And if you have gray hair, it'll turn black. And the longer you take this pill, if you're old, it'll turn you young. And that's what he decides he's going to do. So he's taking these pills, and one of his followers, this guy that says, I got to go find Ko Hung, I got to go find him. So he travels to this cave where Ko Hung is supposed to be. And when he gets there, the only thing he can find are empty clothes. Ko Hung has Benjamin Buttons himself into immortality, and he took the pill with him. So again, we don't get immortality. But that's what we've been chasing. We've been chasing it for all along. And Campbell talks about this. He says, art and literature, myth and cult, philosophy and ascetic disciplines, living in a cave, taking a pill until you disappear, are instruments to help the individual past his limiting horizons into spheres of ever-expanding realization. Now there's the gem, the wisdom there. It's not about the pill or the plant or the fountain of youth. It's really about us pushing past our limiting horizons, which are our beliefs, our limiting beliefs, and moving into that sphere, that orbit of our lives of ever-expanding realization. How many of you gone to the self-realization shrine over down at the lake? Don't you just feel the energy there of self-realization? That's what we're all about. Go and meditate next to that pool one day, or go up to Mount Washington where you can see this wonderful view of the city and meditate there, and you will feel this expanding sphere of realization coming over you. And as we get to that space, we move beyond needing to be young to be youthful. Some kind of way, though, we started to celebrate it, and I love those star shows, the singing shows, and Johanna and I love to watch the videos, the ones where the young kids come out there and they open up, and this young guy, he was like 14 years old. He decided he was going to sing a Whitney Houston song, and we're like, yeah, right. And he stepped out there and boom, Whitney came back to life through this guy's voice. It's wonderful to watch youth do these incredible things, and we have certainly come to the place where we totally celebrate youth, but that's a new thing. That's a new thing, maybe 19th century or so, because long before that, it was age that was important. See, age. So all of us, most of us, you accepted. Yeah, you're cool. You over there, you accepted. But the rest of us, we are the guardians of the wisdom. That's why I like to call old people wisdom keepers. And that's how it used to be. We were the guardians of the legends and the customs of our ages. We were the ones that had the values, that understood crafts and skills and could teach it to the young folk, No, back in the day, we would be the ones teaching the kids how to use the computers. Back in the day, but it ain't back in the day. But we're still wise counsels, But why does that not happen? What's happened that we celebrate youth? And, check the reason it was that way in the day is youth, really? I mean, medicine wasn't all that great, so there was stillborn and infant death, so, being young was not cool. If you could get past youth, you could have some life in you, And then you had to go to war. We send the young people out to war, so youth wasn't all that cool for that either. And then youth are kind of crazy, so they get involved in crimes, and then when you get involved in crimes, so that's not all that cool either. And then youth get all pissed off in love, so I challenge you to a duel, bang, now they're dead. So youth isn't all that great back in the day. And there were hazards. There was no OSHA. So you're out working, there goes your arm, and there's no doctor, so you just bled to death right there in the field. Youth was not all that great. So if you got to be old, they figured you were cool. You figured something out because you got to be old. Now, that's gone. And you can thank one guy, Emil Durkheim, a 19th century French philosopher and statistician who decided to do a study of suicide in France. And he figured out that there were a certain number of people that died of suicide in certain counties in France on a regular basis. And suddenly, data began to equal destiny. It was not about how wise you were, how smart you were, how much you knew, how many skills you had. It was whether you could outlive the stats that said you were going to die at a certain age. And things started to shift a little bit. Hillman talks about it. James Hillman talks about it in a wonderful book called Force of Character. He says, the longer you last, the longer you will last. So that with each day of aging, you may expect another day on the actuarial curve to infinity. All right? It's interesting, right? Ginger turned around and looked at Jerry. Dig that, right? I know. We all know, right, what we're talking about with Jerry? 103. Love you, baby. All right, 103 and a half. A 102 and a half. What is it with me and math? I got to get a remedial math class. I just can't seem to get the numbers straight. But anyway, the point of the matter is that we have begun to understand and think about how long we can live instead of how rich our life can be in the living of it. And so what I want to talk about and encourage us is to live that youthful experience of life right now every single day, because each day of aging, you can expect another day. So why not live each day with more youth in your life? And we're starting to do that. I mean, we got the 50 is the new 30, and 60 is the new 40, and I certainly feel maybe even 60 is the new 6 for all that we've heard. And back to my friend Mary Baker Eddy. She says that there is something within us that is eternal. You know what that is? Life. Life is eternal. It just doesn't stop. And so we have an opportunity, as we come to understand that, to demonstrate the eternality of life through our own immortal behavior. You see, the body can signal that something's not working for us, but it can't really tell us what it is. It's the mind that determines it. It's the mind that determines it. Yesterday we had our class. And I don't mean to tell on all the class, but I'm going to tell on you anyway. I happened to have this moment where everybody was writing, and I looked out, and just about everyone in the class was wearing glasses. Me included. And I was thinking how we have just really accepted this idea that as we age, we need glasses. But if our mind didn't determine it from that perspective, when our eyes said we're not focusing as well, maybe our minds, if we had a different mindset, would say, I need to do some exercises. I need to maybe increase my light. I need to rest my eyes. Whatever. We might come up with some other kind of way. Or maybe that's just not the way it is, and refocus and just move our minds into a place of refocusing. But it seems like we have made some agreements about getting old. And if it is truly done unto us as we believe, then I think our beliefs about aging are affecting our quality of aging. And that we have within us this thing called life, this immortal thing that will allow us to demonstrate more health, more youth, more vitality, more creativity. That an old dog can learn new tricks. Trust me, I get my dogs from the pound and they always learn new tricks. Back to Joseph Campbell for a minute. He says, the font of life is the core of the individual. And within himself, he will find it if he can tear the coverings away. What are the coverings again? The coverings are our beliefs, our limiting beliefs about who we are and how we are. We cover ourselves over with these beliefs, but down inside there is that that is life itself that lasts and lasts and lasts. If we can move ourselves out of the coverings. Now, it's not going to happen right away because it's a process. We've got centuries upon centuries of believing what we believe about aging, and we've got our own personal experiences of how we've experienced aging. And so this talk that I'm having for you may take some time to unfold. Now, for some of you, if it happens right away, that's great. Please tell me, because I want to get your secret so you can help me take my coverings away that much faster. But the idea here is that we do have have within us the potential to live life all the way to the moment we decide we're done with it, with this energy, with this vitality, with this level of creativity, to expand, to move beyond where we've been before. Because as Dr. Holmes tells us, life is a mirror and will reflect back to the thinker what he thinks into it. Mirror, reflecting back. When you look at yourself in the mirror, check this out. How many of you really, when you look at yourself in the mirror, do you see how old you are? I don't know. I mean, sometimes I look in the mirror and I'm like, what happened? Because, right? Because I certainly feel like 19 or something.
I see her when I look in the mirror.
She's standing behind you. That's why. But you know, a lot of us, you know, we walk through life and we're doing our lives and we're doing our things. But when we think about stuff, the stuff that got us excited when we were younger, like earlier today, Barry White came on and he was singing, "I got so much to give to you, my dear." And suddenly I was 18 again, dancing in the high school dance. I just love that music can take me back to that space, you know? And that's where we all have that ability to do that. There was a woman, she was recorded in The Lancet. You know The Lancet? It's a British medical journal. It's been printed since 1823. It's an old journal. And in it, one of its early articles was about a woman who was heartbroken, just devastated. And her heartbreak was so intense that it actually drove her crazy. And she was so insane that she believed that time had stopped at the moment her heart broke when she was 40 years old. And that's where time for her stopped. And you know what? In this article, they tracked that her aging stopped at that point too. People saw her 30 years later, she's 70, and they thought she looked like she was 40 because she didn't know. Life reflected back to her what she thought into it. Now, maybe that's an extreme story. Maybe it didn't even happen. Just because it's written down doesn't mean it's true, right? Fake news. But I have some real stories for you. Ben Franklin, 16 years old when he printed his first newspaper. That's pretty incredible. That's like Star Search. That's like, ooh, I'm showing my age, Star Search. Jeez. Oh, Chuck Barris died last week. Boom! Right, the Gong Show, right. 16 when he printed his first newspaper. 81 when he worked on the U.S. Constitution. George Burns, 80 years old when he received his first Oscar. Michelangelo, how old was he when he painted the Sistine Chapel? Do you know? He was 71. No wonder he had to print it on his back. He was tired. And Golda Meir, another 71-year-old when she became Prime Minister of Israel. And here's one, it's S.I. Hayakawa. I used to always like that guy, right? He was the president of San Francisco State University until he was 70 years old. And then what did he do? He ran for Senate and won and was senator for 3 terms. 3 times 6, that's 18 years. That's pretty incredible. So we can expand. There are no limits to our lives except the limits that we set for it. We have within us the fountain of youth, and it's about drinking thoughts that keep you young, that keep you creative, that keep you in the upward spiral of life, that make the 50-30 and the 60-40. And why not go 60 to 30 and 50 to 20? Although 20 is kind of crazy. Those are some rough years. 30 was, things started to stable out a little bit. I don't know about you, but that was my story. There's so much joy waiting for us. There's so much joy waiting for us in each and every day. You know, when you think about sculpting, there's 2 ways of looking at it. There's one that the guy is or gal is molding something, right? And then there's the other idea that they're taking stuff away to reveal the beauty that's already there. Maybe it's time for us to start taking stuff away from our thought patterns and our habits and our ideas of our regular way of how life should be until we sculpt something that is so magnificently beautiful that it gives us that taste of immortality, that taste of eternality. Because it's part of what we believe in the science of mind. The soul ever expanding, immortal and eternal, rising up to a higher level of expression on a regular basis. Mary Baker Eddy says, we are all sculptors working at various forms, molding and chiseling thought. What thoughts do you want to chisel out, reform, mold into new and fresh ideas for a better experience of life each and every day? Back to my man, Ernie is my Holmes boy. And he says, life is not just something to be endured. It is to be lived in joy, in a fullness without limit. So I suggest to you today, you don't need to search for the fountain of youth very far. Just look into the mirror. It's right there where you are. And so it is. I didn't even... See, this is why you can't plan tangents. I had a tangent about laurels, and I didn't do it because you can't plan tangents. But who knows laurels, the story of laurels? You know the story of laurels? Okay, so laurel is a tree that smells sweet. It's sometimes like a bay leaf. It smells really sweet. And what they used to do, the Greek gods, Apollo was in love with some god, I forget her name, and because the Greek gods can do anything they want, she didn't really like Apollo all that much, so she when he approached her, she turned herself into a laurel bush, and he was so enamored with her that he says, I don't care, and so he picked the laurels and he put them around his head. And so that's how wearing laurels became. So since that was the Greek thing, when they had their races and whoever would win, they were like the gods because they won, so they would get laurels to wear. And so that's where the idea of laurels came from. And now we don't really put laurels around people, but we do have poet laureates, so we still celebrate people in a way that says laurels. So your laurels are the great things that you've done in your life, right? Okay, so let's do the affirmation. Here we go. Laurels? What laurels? I live afresh in the power of what's new, expansive, and life-giving. And so it is. All right, there you go. I see some people ready to give up their laurels right now. Oh, here we go. Let's do some prayer. Thank you, Johanna. She's nice. I like her. When she was doing the reading, I was thinking about something that James Mellon told her one time. He says, you could read the phone book. I'd be sitting right there listening. All our practitioners, I'm so grateful for the readings that you guys bring at the beginning of the service, which we call art, affirmation, reading, and treatment. And that art literally sets the stage for the service. I really appreciate that. In our prayer time, what we have been doing, I think we should continue to do, is I invite you. Thank you, John. Rewrite. Give me a rewrite. To allow to rise up within you someone who may have a condition that you want to see changed, or some condition in your own life that you want to see changed, or if you're living in this place of just deep joy and gratitude, maybe you want to shout that out. But at this time, we're going to shout out into the room the prayer request that you would like to have for this particular moment right now. So I just invite you to do that. Spirit knows, Spirit hears, Spirit understands. And in this understanding and in this knowing, we recognize the one power, the one life that is God expressing as each and every person in this room and each and every person that we have just spoken into the room. And those that did not speak, but are holding an intention in their heart and mind as well, we know that Spirit hears that too, for Spirit speaks the language of feeling. And what we are feeling right now is a rejuvenated spirit that expresses as love and peace and harmony and divine guidance and right action. There is a perfect situation unfolding for each and every person that we are holding in our hearts right now, that we are speaking the word for. We are knowing that victory is assured as we move into this space of pure understanding that the law hears and obeys. And because there is this power that is tied into infinite substance and infinite supply, into intense wisdom and knowledge and knowing, that knows how to do it, where to do it, when to do it, and is doing it now in the lives of all those that we are holding in our minds, we are grateful. Grateful for that process of unfoldment. Grateful for the allowing of Spirit to have its way by means of each and every one of us. And we know that the way of Spirit is good and very good. For it is the Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom, and the kingdom resides within each and every one of us. And for that, I sit here in a moment of gratitude, standing in the presence and affirming the good for each of us as we release this prayer into the law by saying, and so it is. I see.